Hi everyone, this is part 2 of my viewer question and answers. I had a few other people ask some questions, and I had a few more questions to address that people had asked me recently. So this is a part 2. I'll put the link to the first part in the bar down below. And I've had a lot of fun doing this, so if you have questions of your own, feel free to post them underneath here, and I will address them in a future video. It's just funny the things that you think you've mentioned or talked about that maybe you haven't, and so it's great when people remind you that there are certain things still to kind of discover or talk about together. So the last question that was asked of me by the viewer who kind of got me started on doing these videos again was about stones. So she uses stones and crystals, and she's wondering, kind of similar to the questions about the decks, if you are using a lot of them, is it going to affect what's happening? Is it going to be too much? Is it going to be not enough? Are things going to kind of be polarizing with each other's energies if you're using a myriad of stones or crystals with your decks? So I've done a little series on crystals and stones, and if you've watched any of those, then you know that I come from a very intuitive and trusting space with the stones themselves that I work with. So let me just say where I'm coming from with that. I feel that the energies that are stones and crystals are extremely ancient energies that have been on this planet for millions of years and are really gifted, powerful healers at a vibrational level. And this includes stones as well as crystals. So I'm not someone who just works with crystals or who thinks crystals are better than regular stones, whatever. No, I'm saying across the board. A pebble on the ground has as much healing energy to me as like a large quartz wand, for instance. So I feel that these energies are very, very ancient healers with very clear purposes and messages to give us, and all that we have to do is tune into our intuition to hear their messages and to understand how to use them when they come into our lives. I'm also someone who believes that stones and crystals come into your life, and they also go when it's time for them to go, and they'll let you know very clearly. And I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I will try to edit that out if I'm able to do that. Still have bad allergies, guys, sorry. So anyhow, I think while books with stone meanings and crystal meanings are great and wonderful, and you know, the little things you get with the stones that tell you what the stones mean are great and wonderful, but that's a really big generalization when each stone is a very powerful personal healer. So I'm always going to encourage that you listen to what your stone has to say to you. And you can do that through a meditation, just through a connection of the vibrational energy of the stone itself. You'll have an understanding of the purpose that the stone has come into your life for if you really sit down and do some work with the stone. Very similar to tarot. If you actually spend time with your cards, you have an understanding of the energy that's occurring between the two of you. So I'm someone who talks to my stones, listens to my stones, and I trust when I'm hearing that they want to work with certain decks. So I might store certain, not store because I don't really store my decks, but I might have a certain stone on top of a deck. Like for instance, my Lay Vampire deck, and I have 2 copies. I have one in my upstairs room and I have one downstairs on my kitchen altar. I use Bloodstone or Apache's Tear with those decks, and I always have a small stone of Apache's Tear or Bloodstone with the decks themselves kind of on top of them. And to me, you know, listening to what the deck has to say with the stone, those stones marry very well with the, did I just say Lay Vampire deck? I meant Tarot of the Vampires. Sorry, guys. Oh my god, this Mercury in retrograde is killing me this time around. Okay. Apache's Tear and Bloodstone work very well with the Tarot of Vampires deck for me. And so I do keep those stones with the Tarot of Vampires deck all the time. At any other given time, I might have a different stone on top of that deck. The individual pieces of Bloodstone or Apache's Tear might travel somewhere else, and I might have another piece that comes in. So do you see what I mean? Like, it's a very intuitive process, and I listen to the stones, to where they want to be and where they should be. I'm someone who creates an altar for every reading that I do, and so I always gather stones as part of that altar to work with the decks and for the client or the querent. So that is an intuitive process. I check in and I ask what stones would like to be present for the reading. What is their purpose for being there? And there's almost always an overriding theme. And so the stones will show up that support that and be present for the client or the querent, whichever you prefer to call them, for the reading itself. Same thing if I'm doing energy work with a client in person or long distance. I will have certain stones and crystals that I use for those sessions, and I will check in and let that be intuitive. So it's always an intuitive process for me. Most of what I do is intuitive. In my experience, I am most authentically myself and in my power as a healer when I am trusting my intuition and listening to the messages that are being given to me. That's an essential part of the process for me, and I apply that to stones and crystals. So I have not found that there's like this craziness that happens if I've got too many stones in the house or too many stones around certain decks. They'll always give me a clear message in it, and I'll understand that it's time to move some somewhere else, or maybe it's time to gift some. They might be ready to move on to the next person. Or they might wish to be on a different altar in the house, or they might have a new message for me, and they'd like me to sit with them and meditate with them and listen to that. So it's always an ongoing conversation. And for me, it's just about getting grounded enough to tap into that and to listen to the messages. Stones are extremely powerful healers, people. And if you really sit and listen to their messages, you've got insanely amazing teachers with you. And they will help you to do a lot of the healing work that when we work person to person, it can take us years to get to at times. So if you feel drawn to explore that, then please, by all means, explore that. I feel like I've gotten off topic. I'm very passionate about this. So, no, I have not noticed that too many stones is too confusing for me at all. Again, it's intuitive, and my house is filled with stones. I've mentioned it in other videos. I've had stones come in and out of my life since I was born. I've always had people who've worked out in the earth with stones around me, who have gifted them to me, who have brought them home to me. Even in the strictly Christian religious house I grew up in, my father from the get-go was bringing me stones, and I was storing them, and had them around me all the time. So I've always worked with stones, and I've never found that there's any type of confusion that happens. It's about trusting and listening. So as long as you're listening, you'll know when it's time to switch up the flow. That goes for jewelry as well as for stones that you use for work too, with your decks. So I hope that's clear enough. Let me know if that's not. I'm very passionate about stonework, as you can see. Okay, so I printed out a few of the other questions. So when I have to part with a deck because it's been damaged, like I mentioned in the first video, how do you do it? So this was a really great question. And when you get a replacement, is the energy similar to the discarded deck, or are different copies of a same deck different in that regard? These are great questions. So I printed these out because I thought, this is a good thing to talk about. So when I have a damaged deck, I don't throw it out, because it is something that I've honored as a sacred tool. I love to do collage work, and I also do kind of like a mandala in my bedroom with cards on the walls in certain areas. So decks that have been damaged, the few that I have that have been damaged, I will incorporate into these aspects. So the cards might show up in different journaling sections in my journals, or my Book of Shadows or Book of Mirrors. Or they could show up on my wall as part of this mandala. And this is very therapeutic for me, number one, and engages my creative side very beautifully. But it's also a way that I still keep those images, and I still honor the integrity of the tool that I've used as sacred. So I don't throw out the damaged decks. And the other thing I do, which is kind of fun, and you might find that you like to do this too, I will, when I write out cards for friends, if I have a damaged deck, I will slip one of the cards that's not damaged into the deck as just part of the card for the person. So, you know, it's just kind of cool when you open up a card to get something you don't expect like that, and there's no guidebook meaning attached to it, so it's just something really intuitive and beautiful that this person can have, and that card can go with them until they feel drawn to gift it to someone else. And I just love that idea of it kind of revolving around and around. And I don't feel that that disrupts the energy of the deck as a whole, because I'm still honoring it as a sacred tool that it is, and it's obviously chosen to be out of its traditional deck form for a reason. So when I say that each deck has its own energy, and that I honor the deck as having a unique energy, and that these are real energies, because where your attention goes, energy follows. So my feeling is, if I am looking at this deck and honoring this deck, then it's taken on a life of its own. Whoever's created it, it's taken on a life of its own because they have placed attention upon it. So to me, the deck itself as an energy holds that energetic blueprint. And so if I have a damaged deck and I get the next deck in the mail, it's still, my experience up to this point has been that it still holds the same energy. It's still that same deck. It's just on different paper. It's still an emanation of that same energy. And I haven't found that, like, the new copy of the deck has a different energetic feel or a different blueprint. It still carries that same blueprint to me. And so working with it is the same. And I can say that, you know, I've got several copies of Tarot of the Vampires. I have a couple copies of a few decks, actually. I have a few copies of the Isis Oracle. I gift that deck a lot, and so I have 2 copies anyhow in the house. And then I have a copy that travels with me, and I gift that deck a lot. So I haven't found with the Isis Oracle that each copy of it has a different feel. It always has the same feel to me. Let me just make sure I was clear on that. And the other thing I would say is, like, the Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud. The Fairies Oracle that I dearly love but loves to disappear on me. I've had to purchase that deck 3 times, and a friend of mine gifted me another copy of it, so I have an extra copy in the house, which is amazing, because now when I lose this copy, I will know. I know that I have another copy in the house. But that one, the other copies don't feel different to me. So I hope that that's clear enough, but I love those questions. I thought they were really great ones. And, you know, and on a practical level, questions that we would think of listening to this tarot reader talk tarot. So, this question is from a new reader. Sometimes I surround myself with several different decks and admire them and study them. I'm wondering if I should only be using one deck at a time. So right now you're comparing 3 or 4 decks at the same time. Just to see the similarities and the feel for certain cards. I know each deck has its own energy, you say, so maybe I should only be working with one at a time. Your thoughts would be appreciated. I would say no. Go with that hit to work with different decks. I had, let's see, boy, I better remember back now. When I first started purchasing tarot decks, I had gotten a few, because I'm a Taurus and I buy multiple decks, at the same time. Rider-Waite-Smith was not my first system. Tarot of Vampires, Deviant Moon, Dark Angels Tarot I had gotten early on. Those tarot decks, there was one other one, but I can't remember right now, were my beginning decks. And kind of after I had started to do a lot of book work, I saw that, okay, I need a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So I did end up purchasing the Pamela Coleman Smith commemorative deck, which is beautiful if you are a Rider-Waite-Smith fan, by the way. So I was working with several different decks with several different themes and energies at the same time. And I actually found that to be very helpful in conjunction with my book research, because I could do, like you said, like let's say I want to look at the magician and I have 4 or 5 different representations of the magician. This is actually a really great way to get the creative, intuitive juices flowing for you and allow yourself to see what the images are, the scope and the spectrum of meanings that you can have from those images, and how you intuitively interact with those images. So this is important because when you are reading, it is very important to be in touch with and paying attention to your intuition. And so I would say working with multiple decks in this way is a really great way to help you understand what your intuition is telling you. It's like working together so that you have an intuitive image toolkit, so that you know when you see certain things, oh, okay, this feels like this to me, which is bringing up this emotion, which means that this person could very well be experiencing this emotion themselves. So do you see, it's all an intuitive process, and so it kind of flows like that. So I think working with multiple decks in this way is a great thing. I would definitely not discourage you from doing that. It is helpful at the beginning to have the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, just because you can see what a lot of books, especially for tarot beginners, are talking about with key symbolism in the images. So I would say it's helpful to have a base so that you can lay that out and look at it, but I have never really read with a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. As far as the original, I mean, I read with different variations of that, but the original Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it doesn't quite, I just don't flow with it the way that I flow with Tarot of Vampires or the Marielle Tarot, for instance. So that would be my advice to you. Keep working with multiple decks and lay them all out so that you can see, okay, how do I read the cards, as well as what are the guidebook meanings for the cards. Let's see, next question. Is it necessary to, or should you do or create or open sacred space for doing a daily draw, or a draw like you mentioned at the end of the video? I never know what to do about that. So, I love this question. I am someone who kind of prefers to start my day by creating sacred space for myself, and that includes my daily draw. So I am someone who does step into sacred space when I do that. I'm someone who works with the medicine wheel as part of my practice. In a lot of ways, it's very similar to the way pagans would draw out or carve out, create their circle, their sacred space of circle. And I've just found that for me, the medicine wheel has this really beautiful symmetry to it. And so every morning, my intention is to give myself enough time to walk that medicine wheel. And then I have crafted sacred space for myself. I've connected with the 4 elements. I've connected with the grandmothers. I'm in alignment with Mother Earth. I'm in alignment with the Sky Grandmother. I'm in alignment with the grandmothers within. And so there is a sacred space that I'm stepping into with that, and it doesn't take long, so I can do that. And there's just a different feeling that I experience when I've done that as opposed to when I haven't done that. It's just something that works for me. And I don't choose to get any more into it than that. It's a sacred space that I create that's beautiful and works for me. So yes, I do create sacred space like that. You know, I don't need to set up all my tools and really draw my circle and then break it down at the end. I just walk the medicine wheel very quietly, very quickly. Allow myself to feel that centeredness and groundedness. And then I'll have a cup of tea and draw my card and do some journal work in the morning before my son gets up. So that is a way that I step into sacred space every day. And I have found from personal experience that when I give myself the gift of that time versus when I don't, I have a very different day. So for me, yes, I do create sacred space when I do a daily draw. Again, it's not some 20-minute process. Although I love to do that on occasion too, but for every day, it's just a simple walking of the wheel, honoring of the sacred space, of where I am, of my journey, and then I will do card work for myself and just do some journaling. And that's part of how I step into that sacred space. So I do that because it feels good for me, but by no means do you need to do that to be, to do a daily draw. I would say a few moments of centered breathing would be really great before you do your daily draw every day, just so that you're clear as you're pulling the card, and so that you can come from a clear perspective with your intuitive interpretation of the card itself for you that day. This would apply if you do your daily draw at night too, I would say. So it's a very personal thing, but I would say yes, I do step into sacred space as often as I can daily before I do my daily draw. Of course, I don't always make it, but that's my intention, and it's a very beautiful experience with a lot of symmetry to it when I do give myself that gift of creating sacred space and stepping into it with my daily draws. And that would go, you know, for the tea that I'm drinking with the journal work and doing my makeup after that too. Like, that whole thing is all sacred space for me. How would you describe your relationship with the Mary L. Tarot? So I did a really long review on the Mary L. Tarot maybe 2 years ago now, I think. I freaking love the Mary L. Tarot. This is a deck that I approach with a great deal of respect and honor, the same as I do when I work with the Tarot of Vampires or the Thoth Tarot. I don't work with that deck lightly, so I have a great deal of honor and reverence for the deck. It's not a deck that I use daily. It's not a daily deck for me. It's a deck that I use at pivotal points in my life, and I have found that this deck likes to appear for clients who are at the crossroads for readings that I do with them. If someone is in the middle of making a major life decision, whether I am aware of it or not before the reading begins, the Mary L. Tarot usually likes to show up. So this is a deck that is really big picture stuff for me, and the artwork itself is so provocative, beautiful, stunning, and the occult symbolism and knowledge that's pulled into that deck is just endless. And so you can work with that deck for the rest of your life and never get to know every little bit of it. It's a lifelong love affair, the same as Tarot of Vampires for me. Constantly showing me new worlds or new ways to look at meanings, and it's a deck that doesn't allow me to get comfortable with my reading of the cards. It really pushes me to think and to question and to shift perspective. And the guidebook to that deck is beautiful as well. So that's a wonderful book to do research with. I have a deep love for that deck and a deep, vast amount of respect for that deck. And it always has a key space on my personal altar. And it is one that I don't use for everyone. And again, it will show up for the crossroads for people, or for people who are really searching and really trying to find themselves. So I have a great, vast amount of respect for that deck. It also really doesn't let me hide. It gives me very, very truthful, very clear, very honest answers, and I cannot hide from my shadow stuff when I work with that deck at all. Like, it's right there. It's very clear. And so journal work is always a key part of working with that deck. It's also a deck that lends itself really well to ritual, in my opinion. So anytime I'm really wanting to, just feel connected to and just like revel in my witchiness, that is a deck that I will pull out for ritual. It's a very powerful deck for ritual. So I have talked for a really long time. I hope I've given some clear answers to the questions that some of you had after watching the first video. If you have any other questions, feel free to post them below this one. I will be sure to look at them and print out the questions and address them in a future video. Thank you all so much for being part of this journey with me. It's an honor to talk tarot with you all and to share our journeys together. It's such a beautiful community that we're all a part of here. And so, as always, I am sending you much love and many blessings. I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys.